This man has goggles on his head, a huge wetsuit on, something that appears to be a wedding ring. How did he come upon that? Is it his? And why is he smiling? Well, to answer those questions, we have to start at the start. A few years ago, I wrote a guidebook called Into the Hundred. This centered exclusively on Maine's 100-mile wilderness. So I wanted to end the book on a high note. I didn't want people coming away thinking that the 100-mile wilderness is, the scariest thing in the world. No, it has a lot of great points. Gulf Hagus is just one of them. It's a major, big one. Very positive place, very awesome place, very dangerous place. Probably not a good place to drop something. What do I mean by that? So I wanted to end the book on a high note, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's an article about a married couple. The short version is this. The lady, then Erin Helfin, lost her uninsured engagement ring at the bottom of Buttermilk Falls. Oops. The guy, Evan Neto, against all odds. Well, So I emailed them and waited. Never really got a response other than they were okay with me writing about their story. But I never heard from them, and I had to print off the book, so I made up what I could from just internet sources rather than the horse's mouth. And, you know what happened after that. Obviously, just as it was going to press, I get an email saying my query had gone straight to their spam folder. As Evan put it, Chris, I am honored that you've already used this story. I apologize for being late. But if you ever decide to revisit this story or expand on it, I want you to at least have some ammunition. I couldn't say no to that. And we had quite a bit of email correspondence, and this is what I was able to get. And I asked him how long it was did he look in the trail before going to the falls. He told me they noticed the ring was missing approximately 10 minutes after leaving the swimming hole at Buttermilk Falls. Erin gasped out loud, and Evan was certain that she'd been stung by a bee. And he would later say, I wish it had been that simple. She held up her shaking hand, and it was empty. The engagement ring was gone. We looked up and down the trail, curled back towards Buttermilk Falls, but there was nothing to be seen. Almost immediately, Evan started getting a really bad feeling that Erin's finger had shrunk because of the cold water, and it had plummeted right straight to the bottom of the pool. Said Erin, I had a really bad feeling that it was there. I realized it would be swept in the current that day. So I went to a rock that we had taken a picture on in the water and dove blindly, filling my hands with pebbles and rocks, but it was no use without being able to see. Must have done that out of frustration for 15 minutes. I knew I would have to return with goggles. Needless to say, I have lost numerous golf balls and 3 inches of grass, said Evan, so I knew this could be slim pickings. I asked Evan if he'd found anything down there like monster fish or strange bones, and he said surprisingly he didn't find a whole lot of interesting things during his time searching. The only things that caught his eye were shiny things for obvious reasons. He found a nickel and a fishing sinker. They both increased his heart rate when he first caught a glimpse of them, but obviously they were both false alarms. I asked Evan, what were your buddies thinking of your chances to find it? What did Erin herself think of your chances? And what did he think of his own chances? And he was quite frank. A lot of my friends and family had a similar mentality about the situation. We had this feeling of sadness that we lost the ring, but at least we were okay. I remember talking to a surgeon at work in Eastern Maine Medical Center, and he said it was not worth wasting a day to drive to Gulf Haggis and look for a 1 in a million find. To which he replied, "So you're saying I have a chance?" Evans said, "Understandably, I knew doing this wasn't the smartest choice, but I had to hike in and swim, and it was the best 2 hours of swimming I'll ever get paid for." I had these huge neoprene gloves on my hands that kept me from getting banged up on the rocks, but with them on, I just could not get my fingers in to get the ring. So I resurfaced, threw the glove back to the shore, and went down with my finger pinching the little prongs that were exposed. I shoved the rock, and there was the diamond ring. It was wedged under a rock about 15 yards downstream of where we'd swum. I'm confident that unless somebody had moved that rock, it would have found a permanent home. I placed it on my finger, got to shore immediately, and began taking all kinds of pictures to document this unbelievable event. So I asked Evan, at what point did he begin to think and contemplate about exactly how to break the good news? Did you know what you'd say at once, I asked him, or was it all improv? And Evan was like, I didn't know how to break the news. I was so pumped I could not tell her over the phone. But I had to tell somebody, so I confided in my brother on the way back and told him not to tell anybody till I got home. As Evan relates, when I found it, I was in utter disbelief. I'd been hugging the bottom with my belly on some small rocks, and there was this one rock about the size of a football right in front of me. It was a very sunny day, and there was a small shimmer of light on the edge of the rock. I'd already found the lead sinker and the nickel, but this was a different kind of shine that caught my eye. I put my face so close to it that my nose was practically hitting the rock, and I thought, OMG. It was a long drive back to my house from Gulf Haggis to think about what I was going to say, so yeah, it was kind of rehearsed, but then again, it was full of surprise. One of my last questions to Evan was regarding the wedding itself. I asked him if there was any teasing about staying away from Bridal Falls on the honeymoon. He laughed. The story definitely came up at the wedding. Even the priest mentioned it during our ceremony. My parents had blown up some pictures of after we found the ring to decorate the reception with. And there was plenty of teasing during those 2 weeks. One joke in particular revolving around having expensive things insured. And it was a lovely story for all, with the small exception that all of a sudden it became a news story. I asked him if he had contacted the news directly or did it just go viral. Evan thought about that for a minute and he was like, the news was an incidental thing. He posted on Facebook, "Sometimes you have to believe," and before he knew it, friends were sharing it and hundreds of people had liked it. Later that week, he got contacted by 2 news crews. They both showed up to the house at the same time, and as Erin says, we felt a little famous for a second. Both networks aired the interviews, and before long, Glenn Beck shared the story. Said Evan, it was surreal. He was just so happy to make his future wife happy, but this whole story blew up into great news for our community. As Evan reached his home, he pulled into the driveway. Erin ran out, and to say he looked a little down was the understatement of the century. He looked as though he'd come out on the bad end of an MMA match, mentally and emotionally at least, and obviously lacking the ring. "Long day, huh?" she asked. "It was real hard," said the brow-beaten Evan. "Exhausting. Just sick of being in the water. Just tired of it." "But there's one thing that I don't get tired of," he began, getting down on one knee. "And that's proposing to you." Aaron looked down at him, unsure of what he was getting at. Her eyes went to his hand and what it held. "Will you marry me?" Evan asked. Aaron stated that she had no memory of what she said next. In an interview with Channel 7, Evan remarked that somebody had to have been watching out for me that day because there's no way I should have found it. Added Aaron, "It's definitely something we'll never forget. Makes me feel like we're meant to be." Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.